Well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn. I'm delighted to go all the way down to South Africa yet again to join the regular on this show, Errol Musk. How are we doing, Errol?
I'm all right, thank you very much. Tired, but
Well,
from
you've
things
been
I
all over the place. I mean, all sorts of glorious statements are being regurgitated in the press. But I'm very keen to get your feedback on a couple of things. We had JD Vance in the Munich Security Conference on Valentine's Day, and he criticised European governments for what he perceived as a retreat from free speech. He said it's a much bigger threat than Russia. What's your take on it?
well, yes, he made exactly the right comments. It was perfect. They had no answer to him, and their answer simply was, although apparently are too thick or something to see it, but their answer was, we want to go back to the way the Nazis did it in Nazi Germany. That's what they want. So it seems almost impossible to believe. But the German defense minister's response was, "We want, interpreted correctly, is we want Hitler-type freedom of suppression of freedom of speech. In other words, you can only say what we want you to say."
Yeah, and it is extraordinary that sort of side, isn't it? I mean, he quoted a couple of examples. One of the example he spoke about was somebody who was arrested in the UK for praying outside of an abortion clinic.
It's ridiculous. And now the Scots want to put out a thing where if you pray at home, it's also against the law. I mean, look, either these people like this defense minister in Germany and the Europeans are thick as planks, or or they are doing it on purpose. I mean, you can't accredit thinking like that and talk like that to anyone with even a modicum of intelligence. You can't.
Yeah, well, so
Uh,
his words were the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And
no,
what I worry about is the threat from within. I mean, powerful words from J.D.
yes,
Vance.
yes. Well, he's right. I mean, everything he says is right. It's not complicated. It's very simple. But the European people seem to have lost it. They've just lost it. I can't understand what the problem is. Europe has had so much suffering over the years, in terms of strife and ultimately inter-tribal warfare, really, that you'd think by now they'd woken up. But it took the European people to go to America and be exposed to a different kind of sort of government to change to a different kind of people. You know, at the end of the day, the Europeans appear to be sheep, that you herd around.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, it's come at a time when there's been a revelation. The latest statistics out saying that nearly 300 people have been charged with online speech crimes in the UK since the advent of the Online Safety Act. And again, this is prompting concerns about restriction on freedom of speech. Basically, what the legislation does, it criminalizes what they call the spread of fake news and the sending of threatening communications, and it's led to 67 convictions so far. Lord Toby Young, who's a founder of the Free Speech Union, he says the number of people who've been charged with this offence is deeply concerning. I presume you share his concern.
Well, yes, of course. The thing is, the Europeans have been subjects of monarchies for a sufficient time to alter their genetics. So when you've been a subject of a monarchy, which can decide whether you live or die for no reason whatsoever, and to a certain extent still applies in England if they need it, for a D notice, my opinion, Diana. So among others, so yes, they've been under a monarchy for so long that their genetics get altered and they can't think anymore. So they presume that whatever they do has to please the monarch, failing which they will be, dunked in water and see if they're a witch, or they'll be burnt at the stake, or as Galileo was, he was imprisoned for life after being sentence to death, and so on. So, and many others, of course, in Europe. So the concept that the church, or in Europe's case, or the monarch can simply kill you is very well ingrained. Burn you at the stake and all that sort of stuff. Yes. So, it took them to leave the Europe and go to other countries, such as one of them they came to was South Africa. South Africa was not populated by Europeans that came out of prisons. It was populated by initially by people who worked for the Dutch East India Company, and so they were people who were working for themselves. So that they're a fine kind of people. They're not to say that you can't, do well if your parents were convicts at some point. But the thing is, they were originally always, the Huguenots from France and the people who worked for the Dutch East India Company. They were people who fled persecution from France, and they were people who worked in for a large independent company called the Dutch East India Company. And so as a result, they haven't had, for 350 years or so, they haven't had anything to these people in South Africa, I'm talking about, these European people that came here and now call themselves Afrikaners. They haven't had this, they've lost this thing that the monarch can decide whether they live or die, or the church, But the people in Europe, I would think they still have it in them. They still have it in them. That's why Hitler could do what he did, because it was easy to just tell them what to do. And the only country that showed a sign of moving away from monarch was England after they killed the one king, Chuck or something. I think his name was
Charles.
Chuck,
yes,
Chuck. I think Chuck or Charlie or
yes,
or like that. He was killed, so that sort of gave the English a little bit of free thinking, but it seems as though it sank back again. And once again, they're frightened. I remember my mother was British. Obviously, she grew up in England, born in Liverpool and so on. And every time, even in England, when we used to have black and white TV, when the Queen came on TV, everybody had to keep quiet. And everybody had to sit up. And it was kind of creepy, because why? She can't see you or anything. And so, but we all had to sit up, and keep quiet. And so it gave me an indication of how the people there really think, There is an ingrained fear of authority and unbridled authority that people in Europe and still in England have.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Well, I mean, the point that Toby Young brilliantly makes is that if you're trying to criminalize disinformation, it empowers the state to decide what is and isn't true.
Well, yes, exactly. I mean, I know that even now in England, right now, you maybe and others and all the others are very frightened to say anything against the monarchy. Very. It's in you, terrified. But see, I said Chuck, and you quickly said, no, Charles the First. I mean, no. To me, it's Chuck. Chuck he did the Chuck who didn't make it.
Yeah. Well, that's
certainly Chuck the jerk.
Yeah, I want to touch on some of the other stories in the media at the moment, and one of the ones that you wanted me to sort of talk with you about was the Royal Society being urged to expel Elon, as fellows have signed up to this open letter. There's more than 1,700 academics have complained about Elon's behaviour, citing his assault on scientific research. Talk to me about that.
Well, the Royal Society in 1901. I think they first came out in 1900 to say that the sun is made of coal. Okay? The sun in the sky is made of coal. And people wrote and asked, and speeches were made. And then it was finally confirmed by the Royal Society that the sun is made of coal. And that's why it keeps burning, because it's a huge lump of coal in the sky. Okay, it took, so that's what the Royal Society is worth without Michael Faraday and people like that. Well, that's actually the wrong institute. But without some people, it's just a bunch of conventional, ordinary academics punching the same old line, one after the time, one after each other. So yeah, I took a patent clerk who couldn't get a first class degree, and as a result, couldn't get a job teaching in a university, couldn't lecture, get a lectureship, to write a 2-page in 1905, which he sent in. We didn't have the money for postage, by the way, so he had to have somebody take it by hand when they made a trip to Heidelberg University and hand it in, which ended with the expression E equals mc squared. And his name was Albert Einstein, So then they said, oh, maybe the sun isn't made of gold. But it took them about 15 years to work that one out too. No, I'm not impressed.
Yeah. Oh, I understand, but there seems to be a big backlash, doesn't there? I mean, and it's Elon has made sure he's been the town square for free speech. This is what X is all about.
Yes.
But it has affected his business interests as a result, hasn't it?
No, I don't think so. As far as the Royal Society is concerned, I don't think Elon could care less. Couldn't care less. The business side, no. One of the things that is a bit of an advantage if one talks about a slow. It may look the economy has been slowing down a little bit all around, really, for various reasons. But one of the advantages is that when you have a backlog of 450,000 vehicles, for example, Tesla, then slowing down of demand helps a little bit to try and keep up. It's a killer when you can only deliver a vehicle months or years or after it's been ordered. It's not nice. Mercedes have been in that position where at one time it was only possible to order a Mercedes, and it was back in the 70s. I mean, now I can just walk in and buy any Mercedes I want. Right. But in the past, it was the same with them. So when you've got a huge backlog of cars to produce, it helps if the pressure goes off a little bit. So I'm not worried about that.
I was thinking more about, I mean, some people, sorry, there's basically some sort of people who are pushing back against the Doge and how effective it is, and they're saying they're going to picket outside Tesla factories and where showrooms and so on and so forth.
Yes, but if you took the people who you've seen, I'm always amazed to see how many people go to a soccer match. You see them in the stands. It seems to go up and up and up and up, right at the back. Like there must be like 100,000. I don't know how many people are in those stands to watch 11 people play soccer, or 22. I mean, and so those are the people that support Doge. Okay. So when you go out in the street and you see one or two people, with a frown, they've always been moaners and groaners, with a thing saying, "I don't support Doge," or DOGE, then those are the ones you're talking about. And then, of course, the reporters find themselves drowned out by the cheering and everything in the stadium. So it's hard for them to interview any of the 100,000 who support Doge that are all in there. So they go out in the street where there's nobody, and they find this, sort of semi-homeless person and ask him what he thinks or she thinks. And then that person says, "All right, if I ever get a Tesla, I'm going to sell it. I won't buy it." So then they go and plaster that all over their crummy newspapers all around the world. Yeah. It's simple, really.
No, I think you're right. And why anybody would resist the mission, basically, I always say, look, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Why anybody would say it started off by saying we're going to find inefficiencies, we're going to save money. Yes. It's actually exposed a lot of corruption as well, hasn't it?
Yes, well, when this was first mentioned, I had people contacting me, and I said, no, the plan isn't going to be to throw people out of work, because that's not who we are. That's certainly not who Elon is. The plan is to find a work that's not making any sense, or jobs that aren't making sense, and reposition, say, somebody, or perhaps not continue with that post. That was the approach. The main approach was that they're going to look at the, sort of what we used to call in engineering time and motion studies of the department, and to see where the holdups are. As Elon pointed out, only 10,000 people can retire in any year in America, simply because the elevator that takes the manila envelopes down a mine shaft to a storage space can only accommodate 10,000 movements a year or something like that. So that's ridiculous. That's amazing. And as he said, that particular mine where they hide all these manila envelopes has 1,000 people doing it. 1,000 people collecting the envelopes at the top and taking them down and putting them down at the bottom. I mean, it's insane. Yeah. Anyway, so no. Then when Elon and the team got into the departments, I won't say they started with US aid, but when they got into US aid, they realized that this is not the case, that money is being stolen left, right, and center, and it is being given to themselves. They're paying themselves. They're washing money. They're issuing blank checks to their friends. They are doing the most extraordinary things. The list is unbelievable. In the last year, they've given the Taliban $697 million. That figure was given by a congressman in a Congress hearing, in Congress. So it's not like hearsay or anything. They gave the Taliban $697 million taxpayers' money. And these are the same people that American servicemen have been killed by, and in quite recent times. So you have to ask yourself, unless you're really stupid or something, what's going on? Yeah. My government is not working for me, or the people, or we've been infiltrated by, as in The Others, with Donald Sutherland's great movie, I think it was called The Others, or the Strangers Among Us. And or we've been infiltrated by people who dress like human beings, and you need a special pair of glasses or something to see them really. And they are the ones that are now in these government places doing all these things, because no normal person would be doing those things. And so one has to come to the possible conclusion that we've been infiltrated by aliens, and many of them, or most of them, work for the US aid, because they're all paying each other, and the sort of things that they're putting up money for are so odd and so crazy that when Elon went into it with all these people, and he employed the smartest young minds who haven't been spoiled by pre-thinking, or they're not stuck in some rut or something like that. Young people, they're still young, to see where the problems are. They called him and said, Elon, we can't do this. This whole department has to be closed down. Yeah. So they closed the entire department down, told the 2,400 aliens that work there, they can't come to work anymore, locked the doors, and took the name off the building, because the whole operation is preposterous. And they've also found things that I have to still confirm whether these reports are 100% true, but USAID gave Chelsea Clinton $85 million, gave Elizabeth Warren $6 million, and then $2 million, and so on and so forth. So they've been paying these people, and Bernie, whatever his name is, that sort of semi-intelligent individual who has millions of dollars and great number of houses, but calls himself a communist, should start with himself. But at any rate, so it's, there's no doubt about it. And then the other thing is that when they start getting into the other departments, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. You know,
Yeah,
it's going to be
and I
worse.
think that's
I
the
mean,
thing, isn't it? As you rightly say, let's get the evidence. The jury's out. Chelsea Clinton has been tweeting herself saying she hasn't taken anything at all. But let's find it. Let's have all the evidence, and then people
yes,
can make their own decisions. And another story which is going all round what the viral is obviously about Ashley St. Clair and the so conservative influencer that she's given
yes,
you another grandchild.
yes, yes. Well, that's nice. I mean, that's nice. Elon's not married. He can do whatever he likes. I mean, you know, the day you tie the knot, in the olden days anyway, in the olden days when I was, you know, which is not that far back, if you weren't married, you could do whatever you like. I mean, there's no rules, you know, show me the rules. I'd like to see the rules. So you, lady, you don't want to marry me, then I'll go with anybody I want to. It's got nothing to do with you. You want to marry me? Well, that's different. And then I won't. But not if you're not married to me. I'll do whatever I like.
Yeah. Well, one of the postings that Miss Sinclair put out on X is that she's been planning for 5 years to have Elon's child.
Well, yes, you know, I mean, it stands to reason that a lot of people, I've had it, would like you to be the father of their child, single women who are reaching the end of their you know, sort of childbearing age. I learned from my second marriage that when women reach the age of 35, they enter the danger zone for having children. And special tests have to be done all the time. So childbearing age is, and of course, many people are obviously going to say, "Oh no, no," but no, no, it is 35, and from 35 onwards, you have to have special tests all the time to see what's happening. And these women are professional, and their lives, you know, have just amounted to running around. Many of them pretending that they have very big jobs, very famous or rather important jobs, and really they're not that important. And they've got a company car, and they've got $20,000 in credit card debt, and they haven't got anything, and they don't even have a child. And so then that's the most of them anyway. The
Yeah.
very majority of them anyway. And then they decide they want a child. And these days, you can do the most extraordinary things. I've discovered you can provide. The woman can provide, you know, the female egg, and the man can provide the seed on his side. They form an embryo. The embryo can be frozen, and it can be reused at any time, apparently, which is quite extraordinary. Not only that, you can even choose whether you want to have a boy or a girl.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Oh no,
So you know
absolutely.
now,
You can determine eye color. You can determine all sorts of things that you can put in there
yes.
on that sort of stuff.
Well, yes. So a woman who's highly occupied, sees her time is running out, can, with the sufficient funds, do that, and then later on, when her heavy work or something starts to, you know, become less, or let's say, and then she can have the child even through a surrogate. It doesn't have to be planted back in her. It can be planted in a surrogate, which I don't like that idea at all. But sometimes it helps, and then they can have a child in their, perhaps you might say, older years. You know,
Yeah.
to look
What
after.
don't you like about the idea of a surrogate?
Well, I don't. Somehow, the first thing that occurs to me is that if I was born from a surrogate, I'm probably very much like the surrogate. I'm not entirely, you know, my parents' child anymore. I must be something else. I mean, if I was, you know, the embryo might have been from my parents, so-called, and then, but if I was part of the woman who grew, in whom I was, you know, grew and everything, surely my head tells me, well, you know, I'm certainly going to inherit something from that woman, something.
And then there's
And
obviously got to be a bond between the surrogate and the child because it's inside her for 9 months. I would have thought.
yes, terrible bond. It's, but on the other hand, in case, I don't think it should be done just off the bat, but I think if a woman is very frail, sometimes it's okay. I would say, all right, we'll do that. But if you do it because you're a movie star and you don't want to lose your shape or something. I think that's pretty creepy, you know.
Yeah.
That's pretty creepy.
No,
You know,
it is.
I've had children with South African, especially Afrikaans women, who are very athletic, and the woman's, midriff goes back to what it was when they were 18 within 3 months. Of course, not everybody's like that, but yeah. So it's a moral thing. It's a moral decision to make.
Yeah,
You know. So, but the main thing is that a woman can then, if she's wealthy enough, I suppose, to have a surrogate and create her embryo and all that sort of stuff, and choose whoever she wants to be. Apparently, the fathers from a book or something of pictures, or I don't know what they choose from. Yeah, why not? I don't see anything wrong with it.
No, interesting. Well, one of the things I love about hard conversations, Errol, and with the great feedback that we have to those conversations, is that we manage to put right the various reports in the media and the various inaccurate reports. And I always say, if you don't read the newspapers, you're ill-informed. If you read them, you're misinformed. Well, one of the ones at the moment that's going around is that you've branded Elon as a bad father and says he was never there for his mega brood of children.
Oh
What's
no,
the
no,
truth?
no, no, no. I was interviewed by, I don't know, I've had this fellow referred to by people who contacted me from all over the world as a grub and a jerk and everything. But anyway, it's a young bloke. He hasn't got the experience to ask proper questions. But at any rate, he asked me questions, and the question was, why does Elon spend so much time with X? Which is also an odd name to your child, but nevertheless works. So I started explaining to them that when they first started out, they were so occupied, and it's still like that in America. If I visit, they work so much, their hours are so overwhelming. That's why Americans are so much better off than the rest of the world. I mean, even now, if I go in the recent months, I mean, last year, if I go and see my family, I can only see them very little because they leave for work at Sparrow, what we call Sparrow. They're gone, and they come back at 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
And then you think, well, all right, I'll see you on Saturday. No, Saturday they go to work too, and then you hope you'll see them on Sunday. No, Sunday morning they're at work too. So then you see them very, very little, and so when they was first starting out, I'm sure you can imagine with Elon and Kimball having to start a company in 2 years that would sell for hundreds of millions of pounds in cash. They must have been doing something. I imagine they weren't at the beach, so they were at work all the time. And then they went on to PayPal. Elon did, and Kimball went on to what he was trying to do at the time was it was a Wi-Fi system of survival where you could follow people on the internet, but it was too early. It was too early. He was too early on that. Anyway, that's not important. The thing is that when you're working like that, you have to be at work all the time. You never really see much of your kids. Now, I had that a little bit, and their mother, May, she wouldn't have it. She insisted that I should be at home more. In fact, in May's case, Elon's mother's case, when I was told I have to join a golf club, if I'm going to go anywhere, I've got to be a golfing man to be able to get ahead and meet everybody. May came along and said, well, I'm also going to join the golfing club. Go with you. I'm not going to be a golfing widow. I'd never heard of that. And so she didn't put up with it. But in many cases, certainly in the cases that Elon and Kimball and Elon had, going to work and being away all the time was the modus. It was just not possible to live a normal life.
Yeah.
And that comes back to what we were talking about the professional woman you were talking about, too busy to have a child at the time that she should, and waiting until she's older to use a surrogate in an embryo. Yeah, so what I answered was that, yes, as a result of that, and then, of course, they got divorced fairly early on. from the first wife. As his children have said, they never saw him. They never saw him. And now he's trying to, that doesn't mean he wasn't a good dad. You know, I mean, when he did see them, he would have pumped them with everything, you know, that he had. But, and they certainly never went short of anything, you know. So now with the little one, he's sort of trying a new approach, and that is to spend as much time as possible, sort of overdoing it a bit, but as much time as possible with this one, so that this one can develop, more confidence, I might say. I see it with my children. When Elon and Kimball came to stay with me alone, I actually gave up my practice so that I could be an at-home father for them from the age of 9.
Yeah.
And I took them to school and fetched them to school and back to school and back home and back to school all in one day. And I did that until they left school. I'm quite proud of that I actually did that. And so it made a big difference for them. I think it made a big difference because there was no mother. It was just me. And so, yes, he's trying to do that now with that one. And it will have an effect. I know that with my 7-year-old son, he is who he is because I spend a great deal of time with him, you know, every chance I get. And that's several times a week. And he's a very big gamer. He's a gamer now. He calls himself a gamer. He's only 7. He'll be 8 in 2 months, but
right.
He calls himself a gamer. I bought him the best gaming computer. It cost me an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
And he's even gone and bought games on my card and everything, which I was stopped. And now the Chinese company, PUBG and EDA and all that, they want him to come to China, you know, because he's considered such a good gamer.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's really good, isn't it? But you've always said, and we've had these great conversations beforehand, and you got Elon involved at an early age. You took him along to meetings to meet important people from around the world. It seems as though he's doing that with X now. So, but just to dispel the misinformation and the wrong reports, is Elon a good father?
Yes, of course he's a good father. Too good, you know. The trouble is the time. Unfortunately, you have to put in the time. You know, you can't. As any father, any parent will know, you can't do it in a little bit of time. A lot of things in a little bit of time. Unfortunately, as many people might even say, it's not what you give them in the form of material presents or something like that. It's you being there with them and, you know, saying, I love you and I'm sorry if I made a mistake with you and I hope you're doing all right and I'm proud of what you've done today and how did it go at sport and what time are we going to be back at the school and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It has a lot of effect on a child.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So I would say it's good to dispel that myth. You didn't think he was a bad father. You think he's a good father.
They just spun it that way, you know.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. But that's what I love about our conversation. Is say we can get to the truth of it. The other suggestion is that he was responsible in some way for the death of his first child, the tragic death by suddenly.
No. What I said was I said that the child. It was a cot death of some kind.
Yes, sudden death syndrome, infant death syndrome. Yes.
Well, you know, that's just an interpretation, but it was a cot death that was unexplained. But the problem is that they were making excessive use of nannies. You know, each child had a nanny and all that sort of stuff. And there's no replacement for the real mother being there, making sure. I see with the little ones that I've got now, how their mother won't let them out of her sight. So even if they want to go for a night with somebody, they've never done that. Even the Russia who's been invited to China, you know, she's got to go with, of course, the mother. She won't let him out of her sight unless it's with me, and then it's 2 hours, maybe not even 2 hours. She's very hands-on, very, very hands-on, and there's no replacement for that. So you can't, simply hand to nannies. They've got their own lives. They see it as a job. they're not connected to that child in the same way. And I stand by what I'm saying. I mean, I was in America last year, or the year before, I think it was, when, oh, no, it was last year. And I have a daughter whose child was born, and she has another one who's 2 years old, and the new one came along. And she works sort of a full day, at my daughter. And so they hired a nanny to work through the night so that my daughter could sleep through the night. And the nanny was to be paid a lot, about £40 an hour, which is quite a lot. I mean, for one night, it would have been £250 a night. Quite a lot, I thought.
Yeah.
A lot. And yet the first night that the nanny came there, my daughter discovered that the nanny did not attend to the child, and the second night and third night sort of thing. And the nanny said, "Look, I'm not going to get up every time the child's crying or anything. I'm not here to do that. I've come here to sleep through the night. And if the child, that was the nanny's approach, was not, I'm going to sit with this child through the night. No, no. So they immediately dispensed with that nanny, because the nanny is not like the mother. The mother is up at the first sign of a problem, as you know. And a nanny's a nanny. I mean, it's not the same, it's not the same.
So, and I think, and that's your point, because the way that it was spun in the press is that to say that Elon was responsible for the death is clearly, I mean, a horrendous
That's
accusation.
rubbish.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to say something like that. On the other hand, if parents today go away and leave their kids in the care of others, schools, kindergartens, even if they go away for long periods and leave the kids, remember their parents, they're not going to be get the same level of attention that they would get by their own mother, particularly the mother.
Yeah.
Obviously.
And I think that's sort of why, and there are obviously some people who are dependent on that in order to continue earning and so on and so forth. But as a general proposition, children are best off with their parents.
Well, yes, I mean, I'm thinking here now, if a child does pass away in the care of the mother, there's a big investigation, by social welfare and everything to see what happened. Yeah. There's a much less investigation if the child's in the care of a kindergarten or a nanny or something, because the same level of care is not expected as is expected from a mother. Mm. So, any mother whose child, something happened to the child in her care, it battles for the rest of her life. Yeah. To deal with it.
No, it's
whereas
absolutely
a nanny
horrendous.
Get it in 2 months.
Yeah, no, the devastation on the parents, and you as the grandfather must have felt awful as well.
Oh yes, I mean at the time it was 2 weeks of serious grief because we were all together. Yeah. Nobody had a smile on their face for 2 weeks. It was terrible, and what can you say or what can you do? I mean, it's life. I mean, that's life. It's not the only one. I mean, you try to fit in, make it and understand it as part of life,
Yeah, no. Well, Errol, a pleasure to catch up as always. I'm glad we could put the correct things into perspective and dispel the disinformation that's been done. But for now, Errol Musk, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks.